This is an RNZ podcast.
They say it takes a village to raise a child. I'm Kathryn Ryan, and here we draw on my conversations with experts on 9 to Noon to help you navigate family life. Why movement is part and parcel of getting young children ready for the classroom and learning. Our guest for the subject is Christchurch-based educator Gill Connell, who has nearly 3 decades' experience facilitating courses for teachers and parents both here and overseas. She's the author of several books, including A Moving Child is a Learning Child and Move, Play and Learn with Smart Steps. Gill says kids are born to move, and in the early years it is the body teaching the brain how to accept, assimilate, process and use information. Gill Connell is with us from Christchurch. Morena, welcome to 9 to Noon.
Kia ora, Kathryn.
Let's talk first about the science behind movement and how it impacts on the brain development of young people. How does it work, Gill?
Well, the brain sets priorities in a child's developmental calendar, and movement in the early years is actually one of the top priorities. The brain has structures, and the lower levels of brain development are all associated with movement. And the top layers, what I'm talking about are the brainstem, the midbrain, or what we sometimes refer to as the cerebellum. The limbic system and the cortex are more about thinking, and the brain develops from the bottom up. So a young child, through play and through movement and through real experiences, is working really hard to automate the lower levels of brain development, which are associated with movement and, of course, sensory play, so that by the time a child is ready developmentally and cognitively for more abstract learnings, such as understanding what squiggles, and when I talk about squiggles, I mean letters and numbers, what they mean and what and how they can be associated to real learning.
I mean, we see it in those early years, don't we? Even with an infant, they never sit still. There's about 50 facial expressions per second, and, all the limbs are moving all the time. You see it even in a baby. And then certainly, into toddlersville and, 3 and 4-year-olds, they're just always on the go. We look at them and go, where do you get the energy from? And that's
Absolutely.
Because their learning is so correlated to moving.
That's right. And I think if we prioritise things like ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, we can get in the way of that natural development. It's not that it's not critical, but a child is really working hard to automate those lower levels. And I want to just explain what I mean by automate these lower levels. If you think about the brain can actually only do one thinking task at a time. I know we think we can multitask, but those are tasks that we don't think about. For a young child, when a child starts to try and write and hold a crayon and do all of those kinds of things, what the brain says is, I need to figure out how to hold a pencil. I need to develop the physical foundations that underpin having a good pencil grip before I can think about what I'm writing about. And so kids know this. They are wired to do this. That's why they hang on your towel rails, because gross motor, big muscle movements help children develop their fine motor manipulative skills. Big muscle movements come before fine. So kids hang, they climb on trees, they like you to swing them from their arms, they pull themselves along. They find things in the playground, in your home, wherever they can access, to do these things, because this is the way the brain works. And if you don't automate these things, think about it yourself. If you were writing, you're writing with the hand you normally write with, you're thinking about what you're writing. But if you put the pen in the hand that you don't normally write about, suddenly you're thinking about the process of writing. Where does my pen go? Where do I put the paper? How do I hold the pen? Which way does the A go? It totally changes your thinking process. So for young children, play and all of the movements that we sometimes get really frustrated by are all setting kids up for pre-learning.
I've just had a flashback, and I can see it now, trying to, do the shapes to make the letter A with my pencil and pushing too hard, because I always push too hard and try to get it between the lines. You're right. It is a physical skill before it's anything else.
Yeah, and you mentioned pushing too hard. Well, that's another developmental learning that comes by kids playing in the playground, pushing trucks, pushing carts, pulling things, filling water in, water and tipping stones, and all of the things where they have to learn to how hard to push and how not to push. We've all had the experience where little ones come up and they cuddle their friend, but they accidentally push them over, and we think, oh, that's not good behaviour. But quite often it's because the child doesn't know how much force to use when they're given a cuddle. That's why they bang open and close doors. That's why they do all of those things, because they're learning how to adjust the physical force.
Did you
and that in turn leads to being able to push. How much force do I use when I'm writing?
Did you say big movements prioritise over small movements? Because it occurs to me too, they also love their building blocks and their physical puzzles. Yeah. And so do they combine both, sometimes big movements, sometimes fine movements, or does it tend to progress from one to the other?
It does tend to progress, and when we talk about providing children with I like to talk about a well-balanced physical diet, you do need to provide fine motor experiences and things that are going to help the small muscles develop. But what we do know is, hanging on the monkey bars is one of the best things you can do for building strength in the fingers, and it also trains the thumb, because we encourage kids to hold with a monkey grip or a cortical position where the thumb is underneath. That teaches the fingers to what position they need to be in when they're writing. The thumb always goes underneath. So there needs to be a huge balance. And I was teaching for years, and many kids would come into my classroom not ready with the physical foundations that underpin learning. So my priority became in my classroom to help children to develop those things so that learning could become much easier for them.
I know it sounds extraordinary, but I recall talking to a UK researcher where children had lost the ability to understand their balance and develop their balance to the extent that they were quite literally falling off chairs sometimes in a classroom. I know that sounds extraordinary, but balance is another thing, and even the ability to be able to sit for a period of time and hold your posture, but equally you need to move. And this is the other thing. Movement facilitates the process of learning, doesn't it? We all need to get up and move when we've had enough concentrating.
Well, we do, because there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. When you start to become disengaged with the learning that's going on, you trigger this reticular activating system in your brain. And how you do that is you start wiggling around on the floor, or if you're sitting on your office chair, you start spinning or leaning forwards and backwards. And what you're doing is, as well as triggering that, you are triggering your vestibular system, which is your balance system, your internal balance system. And the most advanced form of balance is to be still. And you can't teach a kid to sit still by practicing sitting still. You need to engage in the movement patterns that are associated with balance, which are rolling. So that's things like rolling down hills and doing forward rolls and hanging upside down. Well, how many parents get frustrated with their kids because they're hanging upside down watching TV? They do that on the couch simply because they haven't had enough of it in their daily physical diet, because many kids are forced into situations where they have to be still, because we perceive that learning is sitting still and concentrating, but we know that the brain knows otherwise.
More roly-polies.
Absolutely.
It occurs to me that trikes and bikes as well, does that help also with the finger grips and finger movements?
Yes, definitely. And it also helps with developing an understanding, once you start using pedals, an understanding of one side of my body can do something different from another, because one pedal is up, one pedal is down. And that's actually quite a challenging developmental stage that kids get to when they start to be able to do those things. You think about rubbing or patting your head and rubbing your tummy at the same time. Many people find that really challenging. And the developmental underpinnings of that is that you have an understanding in your body called the midline understanding. It's not the right word, but you have midlines that separate your body and help you to start to learn that I can do something different with my left side of my body while the other side does something different. And that is quite complex in terms of developmental processes. And you'll think about kids who can't skip and who can't hop. That's often a sign that the midline hasn't fully been developed yet. So doing things like riding bikes, although I do hesitate to say introducing pedals too early can sometimes not be the right thing to do either.
You can have those cute little wooden trike thingies, can't you? You have quite littlies on those. Let's talk about age. So the brain prioritises movement over ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and is this right up to preschool or even starting school age, which is around 5 or 6?
It's very individual, but yes, I would loosely put 0 to 7 as when that is the most critical time. But understanding that kids come into learning environments from different experiences, different homes who have different priorities, kids who don't move, kids who've been from early ages in things like jolly jumpers and walker trainers and all of those things that can inhibit and prevent kids moving through what I call the evolution of movement. It develops in sequential fashion. One movement follows another. And if we interfere in that process in any way, it doesn't mean the child's not going to be able to do it, but it just slows things down. And everybody's got a different time frame for that to happen.
So if you are wanting to prepare your preschooler for formal learning, lots of play is what we're hearing, and not getting, the Baby Einstein stuff out, and not having them able to read and write before they start kindy. The priority is this physical play. Go ahead, Jill.
I would just say that if the child wants to, it's really important to follow what they are interested in doing, but just let them experience it. Let them experiment with it without us hanging over them and saying, no, the A starts here and it goes this way, and just let them experiment. They'll come to it if you also provide a well-balanced physical diet, and that involves things like lots of sensory play, and not just messy play, but eye tracking and ear tracking, and lots of balance play, lots of play where they have to learn to fit their bodies through different things and and learn about how their body fits. Lots of stamina stuff, lots of huff and puff, midline, hopscotch, all of those kinds of things, and getting them to try different ways of doing things. Can you do it backwards? Can you do it sideways? Can you do it down low? Can you do it up high? Change things up. Or instead of saying, can you, I often encourage people to say, I wonder if you can do that slowly. I bet you can't, So you're kind of giving the child a challenge, but it's not a directive, if you know what I mean. But the important thing is to offer a vast array of different movement experiences, not just one.
They're building a physical vocabulary the same way we build a language vocabulary. You made an important point. If they do begin wanting to write, let them do it. It won't look like you're writing, and resist the urge to come in and try and teach them.
Yes, always model, but don't correct. If you can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Where else are we looking at? Growing vocabulary through real experiences. That makes a lot of sense, because again, what they're physically experiencing will go deeper into the mind.
Yes.
Yep.
If I can just come in there, think about writing. When we describe a letter to a child, say, for instance, if you're saying to a child, I want you to draw the letter P. Now, the letter P's it goes down and then it goes up, or you might say it starts at the top and then it goes down and then it goes around. Think about those developmental or those directional words that you're using. Those words are based on experience. Where is top? If I touch the top of my head, that's top up there. I can also touch the top of my foot. How can top be there and top be there? It's all based on real experience and interpreting your understanding from a physical experience. Does that make sense?
It does.
We're
all looking for a reference that we understand, right?
It is a point of reference, that's right. And so these directional words are dependent on a child's experience of those words and an interpretation. An example of that is I was doing the weather with some little children. I had a cloud on the board, and I gave all the children a raindrop, and I said to them, come and put your raindrop under the cloud. So they all stuck their raindrop under the felt cloud. But one little boy came along, and he picked up the cloud, and he put his raindrop under the cloud, then put the cloud back on top. He had a totally different experience of under. Now, we're all correct, but the point is, what we try and do is we give as many different experiences of these words while children are in their play environment. So if your child's climbing up the ladder, you can say, oh, you're going up the ladder and now you're coming down. Or you could say, you're ascending. You can bring beautiful, nutritious words into their play. And because they're experiencing it while they're doing it, it makes a whole lot more sense to them.
So actually position and space things are important, are they? And locational
Correct.
things are very important. And they are indeed in writing, because we're talking about trying to write between the lines and spacing things out and having a gap between words. So again, their real-world understanding of the words you're using will help them. What about memory? Because when they are into formal maths learning, spelling these things, they've got to begin to formally engage memory, deliberately engage memory.
Memory is complex, but the best way to help a child to grow their memory is to do it physically. You think about this when you say to a child, I want you to spell the word cat, or we're going to write the word cat. Now, what's the first sound? That's what we say. What's the first sound? If a child doesn't understand the concept of first, they might not get the sound correct, right? I was working with some children and in a program, a P&P program, which is a perceptual motor program, which helps with these developmental experiences. And we had 3 hoops on the floor. And I said to the child, now I want you to throw the beanbag into the first hoop. And every time I said that, he threw it into the last one. And the teacher was standing beside me, and she said, oh my goodness, she said, I've just realised every time I ask him, what is the first sound, he gives me the last one. I now understand it's got nothing to do with his hearing. It's got everything to do with the understanding of the concept of first. So by giving him physical experiences of that, he's then able to transfer that into the symbolic form, because kids learn from real to symbolic. Same with space. When kids are writing and they're going to put spaces, but you want them to put spaces between their words. If they are clumsy kids, if they trip over things, if they bang into things when they're crawling through things, it's a really good message to us that says, oh, maybe we need to do more physical, spatial experiences with this child. And then that will help with the spacing of his words on the page. Real to symbolic is critical.
Brilliant, Gill. Please come back again.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Love to.
Gill Connell.